Hey everyone, it's Ian from the Postal Hub Podcast.
And Marek from Last Mile Experts.
And we are the Last Mile Prophets. And we're going back to talk a little bit about grocery delivery, meal delivery, but an interesting trend that's emerging in the US where restaurants and supermarkets are really trying to push the pickup. So order online and pick up either curbside pickup or at the restaurant, whatever it's going to be, over home delivery. Now, we did talk about curbside delivery and what places like Walmart are doing, but I think this is interesting that just there's a bit of a push there, Marek, to get away from home delivery. But the reasons are not quite as obvious. It's really about cost rather than customer experience.
In this case, it's really cost. Some of the apps were charging, if I remember correctly, 30% upwards for facilitating the delivery to the customer. And that's an awful lot of money for any restaurateur.
It is, especially when you might be operating in a very low margin part of the trade. So look at this a bit more broadly then, Marek. What does the customer really want? Because this has been the argument put forward by some of our colleagues in the sector, is that we have to focus on the customer rather than pushing them to select a certain delivery option. There's a sort of tension here, isn't there, between the two?
I think there will always be a case for home delivery because if your favourite restaurant happens to be on the other side of town, the chances are you're not going to want to drop by to pick up your food. Having said that, I think there's some research and it says that usually people have only a few restaurants and quite often those restaurants are fairly local. So in that case, it's not such a big deal. My view is this will not replace the need for home delivery, but it will mean that you can offer a much more attractive option for pickup if you're the restaurateur.
And if you look at grocery delivery, if you don't have a car, you don't really want to do curbside pickup, as the Americans call it, or buy online pickup in store, click and collect, whatever you want to call it. If you don't have a vehicle, you're less inclined to do that, unless, again, the supermarket is local and your order isn't too big.
Absolutely. I think this is a new option. It's a lower cost option. And what's, I think, more relevant to our core last mile discussions is the fact that actually it's very similar to the Pudo pickup drop-off point and locker story. By people going to pick up their parcel or to return it themselves, there's a huge saving. The efficiency is much, much larger because you have a physical point that's there. The courier goes to one place. In the case of a restaurant, it's even more the case because they're there anyway, producing their other food for customers coming into the restaurant. So from my perspective, there's a huge cost saving. It's more efficient. If you include Tripchaining, which is my new word, phrase I've learned from you, then it makes it even more efficient.
Well, and I don't know how much tripchaining happens at 8 o'clock at night when you're ordering from your favourite restaurant, but certainly when it comes to things like supermarket delivery of food, because supermarkets have been caught up in all of this, they've teamed up with, say, Instacart, and so you have Instacart personal shoppers going out there and picking and packing in store. I know there are a couple of similar services in other countries where you order via the platform, so not via the supermarket website, but via the platform, and then that driver goes in and does the picking and packing and delivers it to your door. I guess there's part of it there, though, Marek, is that supermarkets might have become too dependent upon these third-party delivery operators instead of building out their own capacity.
Agreed. I'll just come back to one point. We like to have a little banter, as you know. Even in the evening, in my case, certainly, if I'm going to get a nice Indian takeaway, then I'd like some wine with it or beer. So the Tripchaining element theoretically could be that you pop over to point 1 to get your food, to point 2 to get your favourite white wine, etc., etc.
I've heard that phrase somewhere before. Order my favourite white wine. Very Amazon.
Click and collect is big in many markets, and however you look at it, click and collect will be an important element. It's attractive for the supermarket because people come in and the chances are that when they buy one thing, they'll buy another. It's super efficient because the stock is literally on, let's say, the next shelf or a couple of meters maybe away from where they have their normal stock. So it's very efficient, ecological. It brings customers to the store. So for that reason, I believe click and collect is important. It will be increasingly important in places where it hasn't developed.
I think that it comes down to also customer choice, and this feeds into a broader discussion about PUDOs and lockers, as you alluded to earlier. If you are ordering something for collection from the supermarket, well, you know how you're going to get to the supermarket, whether it's on foot, on the bus, or in your car, and that will then determine what you order. I see people walking around with big packs of bottled water. Now, do you really want to order that for buy online, pick up in store if you then have to walk 2 kilometres home? No, probably not.
Absolutely. It's not going to work for heavy items if you're not automated if you don't have a car. I fully agree with that.
So I do think, though, that the delivery side of things is something that the supermarkets need to really fine-tune their act. I know a lot of that is built based on my own personal experience ordering supermarkets online in various markets, and having that, the things like, something we've talked about a lot before, which is how do you replace an out-of-stock item? How do you handle the delivery then from an interactive delivery management perspective? Because this is something, it's a supermarket delivery is not something you want to miss, is it?
I think, Ian, probably, and what you mentioned earlier is true. It's an important element of choice, whatever happens, need to have it. There will always be issues to deal with. The Amazon way usually is if they don't have the item you've ordered, they'll give you something as close as possible, probably more expensive, and say that you don't pay the difference, which makes people happy. If it's a low-cost item, they'll usually give it to you for free, unless things have changed since I was around.
So just in the article, this is on the Wall Street Journal, which is talking about this trend of moving away from home delivery and the platforms to curbside collection. It mentions that Kroger's and various other grocers are waiving pickup fees and building out spaces to fill the orders. Aldi is offering pickup for the first time because customers wanted an alternative to visiting stores or paying for delivery. So it's interesting to see how customers are driving this, and big retailers have to pay attention.
Absolutely. And I think this sort of service is part of this big subscription model ideology, because if you start getting to efficient click and collect, whether it's from store or a PUDO or a locker type delivery, because of the last mile efficiencies that you gain, you can really make subscriptions work. And what's interesting, and this is one I think for another VC, which is, why aren't there more of them? Why is it working really well for Amazon with Amazon Prime? Why is Allegro able to do it in Poland? And why are others not able to do the same?
Oh, Marek, it's a massive question. I'm not sure that we'd be able to cover it in one episode. But everybody, comment below. What do you think is happening with food delivery from restaurants, delivery from supermarkets? Will we see a growth in buy online, pick up in store, whether it's via curbside collection, whether it's via collection from the service counter or from in-store parcel lockers, or parcel lockers located near the store, which is something we've written about before. Marek, what do you think about the delivery fees or the listing fees or whatever they're called that some of these platforms charge? Is that going to drive behavior from the retailers? And finally, how much of an influence is customer choice having on all of this? I mean, we just heard about what's happening in the US with customers saying, we want these delivery options, we want these collection options. Comment below. Share what you think on this. Marek Różycki, Managing Partner at Last Mile Experts, thanks for being part of this episode of the Last Mile Profits today.
Thank you, Ian. Thank you, everyone. Hey, everyone. Hope you enjoyed this episode of the Last Mile Profits.
Make sure you subscribe, hit the subscribe button, and also the notifications bell so you get a notification every time we add a new video to this channel. Look forward to sharing more stuff with you on the Last Mile Profits.